The crowded restaurant went silent when the waitress threw a glass of water in the face of the richest black man in the city. Gasps filled the air, phones came out to record, and whispers of racist spread like wildfire. But no one expected the billionaire to stand up, wipe his face, and thank her. What he said next left the entire room frozen in shock. Marcus Grant, the youngest black billionaire in the country, walked into the luxurious Sapphire Grill on a rainy Friday evening, his tailored charcoal suit glistening faintly from the drizzle outside. Known for his quiet humility and sharp business mind, Marcus had come for a private dinner meeting with an investor. The restaurant buzzed with the chatter of the wealthy and influential, but as he took his seat, he couldn't help but notice the waitress assigned to his table, a young woman named Claire, watching him with an expression that felt cold, almost hostile. She barely greeted him, her tone clipped and mechanical, as if she resented even taking his order. Marcus chose to ignore it, assuming she might simply be having a bad day. Minutes later, she returned with his drink, but instead of placing it gently before him, she suddenly tilted the glass and sent a full wave of icy water straight into his face. The crystal clinked sharply against the table as water soaked his expensive suit, trickled down his jaw, and dripped onto the pristine white tablecloth. Gasps erupted around the room. Heads turned, whispers of racist rippled through the diners, and several guests pulled out their phones to record the shocking scene. The restaurant manager came rushing over, outrage on his face, already shouting at Claire for her behavior and demanding she apologize immediately. But Claire's face was pale, her breathing quick and shallow, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the empty glass. She didn't say a word, only stared at Marcus as though something much bigger than the humiliation had just happened. Marcus sat still, water running down his chin, his expression unreadable. In that tense, frozen moment, no one in the room could have guessed the truth, that her shocking act was not cue insult, but the first step in saving his life. The restaurant was a storm of confusion and outrage as the manager planted himself between Marcus and Claire, his voice sharp with anger. "Sir, I deeply apologize for this unacceptable behavior," he said to Marcus, gesturing toward Claire. "She will be removed immediately." Diners leaned closer, some muttering that they had just witnessed blatant racism, others already predicting the headlines that would follow. Claire's hands shook as she tried to speak, but the manager cut her off, his focus fixed on appeasing Marcus and the other high-profile guests. Phones hovered in the air, capturing every second, ready to fuel tomorrow's viral scandal. Marcus, still dripping with water, raised his hand in a calm but commanding gesture that silenced the room. His voice was steady, almost too calm for the tension in the air. "Before anyone makes a decision," he said, his deep tone carrying across the restaurant, "let her speak." A hush fell instantly. Even the clinking of cutlery stopped. Claire's eyes darted between Marcus and the crowd, her lips trembling. "You don't understand," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had to do it." The words only deepened the confusion, drawing skeptical glances and quiet scoffs from the onlookers. To many, it sounded like the kind of excuse someone makes when they know they're cornered. The manager shook his head, muttering that she was trying to cover up a terrible mistake. But Marcus didn't move. He didn't accuse. He didn't defend himself or her, he simply waited, his gaze locked on her face as if he sensed there was something more behind her trembling hands and pale expression. Around them, the air felt heavier, and the truth, whatever it was, hung like a shadow over every single person in the room. Claire swallowed hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly as dozens of eyes burned into her. "The drink!" she began, her voice shaking. It was poisoned. A wave of startled gasps swept through the restaurant, but instead of relief or belief, the room seemed to tighten with disbelief. Some diners exchanged skeptical looks, others shook their heads, assuming it was just a desperate lie to save her job. Claire gripped the edge of the table as if steadying herself. "I was at the bar getting your drink when I saw a man in a black cap and leather jacket walk past your table. He stopped for just a second, leaned over your glass, and poured something in before walking away quickly. I didn't have time to find you, didn't even have time to think. If you had taken even one sip..." Her voice broke, but she quickly composed herself, her eyes wide with urgency. The manager frowned, his tone dismissive. "Miss, do you realize how ridiculous that sounds?" But Marcus didn't share his skepticism. His gaze didn't waver from her, his expression unreadable yet focused. "What did he look like?" Marcus asked quietly. Claire described the man in detail, her voice trembling but certain. Around them, the once assured crowd seemed to grow uneasy. They had expected a public apology, not a possible murder plot. A waiter muttered under his breath that he had seen someone matching that description leave hastily just minutes earlier. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Without raising his voice, he turned to the manager and said, "Check the security cameras." The request wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of command. In that moment, the shift was palpable. This was no longer a spectacle of humiliation, but the beginning of a truth that might shatter every assumption made in the last 10 minutes. The manager hesitated for a moment, glancing at the uneasy diners before hurrying toward the back office, where the security room was located. Marcus remained standing, his arms loosely at his sides, eyes fixed on the kitchen doors as if nothing else in the room mattered now. Claire stood motionless, her damp hands clutching the empty glass, the weight of dozens of skeptical stares pressing on her. The minutes stretched painfully until the manager returned, his face pale and his confident posture now shaken. Without a word, he beckoned Marcus and a few others to follow him to the small security monitor. There, in grainy black and white footage, the truth unfolded. A man in a black cap and leather jacket slid into the restaurant, moving casually past tables until he reached Marcus's seat. With a quick glance around, he bent over the untouched drink, slipped a small vial from his pocket, and poured a clear liquid into the glass. His movements were practiced, almost rehearsed, and within seconds he disappeared out of the frame. The room behind them was silent as the manager replayed the moment twice more, each time tightening the knot of horror in everyone's stomachs. Marcus's expression remained controlled, but the sharp glint in his eyes betrayed a simmering anger beneath the calm surface. The police were called immediately, and an officer arrived to confirm that the substance in the drink was a fast-acting poison, lethal within minutes if consumed. Around them, whispers turned from judgment to shame as diners realized the truth. Claire's act of apparent disrespect had been an act of instinctive bravery. The manager, still stunned, looked between Claire and Marcus, at a loss for words. Every assumption made in the last half hour had been ripped apart, replaced by the sobering realization that she had saved the life of one of the most powerful men in the country. As the police escorted the suspect from the restaurant, the once buzzing dining room was left in stunned silence, every patron now painfully aware of how wrong their first judgment had been. Marcus turned back toward Claire, the water still dampening his suit, but his expression had softened into something warm and grateful. He stepped closer, his deep voice carrying easily through the hushed air. "Miss, I don't know what made you act so quickly, but you may have just saved my life," he said. Claire, still shaken, shook her head. "I just couldn't let." "You drink it? I didn't have time to explain." Marcus gave a small, understanding smile. "And you didn't need to. You saw danger and you acted. That's courage." Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a sleek black business card and handed it to her. "If you ever need anything at all, call me. People like you are rare." The diners, many of whom had been ready to label Claire as cruel only minutes before, now found themselves clapping softly, the applause growing into something genuine. Claire's eyes filled with tears, not from fear anymore but from relief. The manager, red-faced with shame, murmured a quiet apology to her, while Marcus simply straightened his suit jacket and prepared to leave. Before stepping out, he turned back to the crowd. "Let tonight remind us all, what we think we see isn't always the truth." With that, he walked into the rainy night, his driver holding the car door open, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement. Inside, Claire stood still, clutching the business card, realizing that her quick decision had not only saved a man's life but had also changed the way an entire room full of strangers saw her and perhaps the world around them.